Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. President Biden pledging relief to Kentucky tornado victims. We take a look at a new memorial and hear from some survivors. Senator Manchin standing his ground on Biden's spending bill. This means the measure may not get a vote before the Christmas deadline. CEOs of major U.S. airlines questioned whether masks are necessary for flights, saying they're not needed for protection against COVID-19 in the cabin. States across the central U.S. are in recovery mode, dealing with downed power lines, assessing property damages, and reopening airports. The incidents follow a hammering by record-breaking severe weather. Tornadoes and winds up to 100 miles per hour hit the central states yesterday, with record heat levels, wildfires, and dust storms following closely behind. Data from the National Weather Service shows the storm system set a new record for the highest number of hurricane-force wind gusts of 75 miles per hour or more in one day. That's the most since 2004. The bluster was even enough to flip a semi-truck in Nebraska. A state trooper caught the fall on tape. Nearly 24 tornadoes ripped through Iowa and Nebraska, while nearly 250,000 homes and businesses across Iowa, Kansas, and Wisconsin lost power. Texas and New Mexico also saw brief blackouts earlier in the day. As for today, heavy snow was forecast over the Sierra Nevada through this morning. Heavy rains, thunderstorms, and flash flooding are possible throughout parts of the southern plains, middle and lower Mississippi, and Ohio valleys today and tomorrow. More details are emerging about the victims of that deadly tornado outbreak that hit several states last week. In Kentucky, a memorial's gone up, and residents confirmed the names of the deceased, one of whom was a 5-month-old child. NTD's Jessica Beatty reports.
As the major cleanup begins in Kentucky, some tornado survivors are sharing their stories. LeCedric Richardson works at Mayfield Consumer Products, where several people were killed. He was out sick the night of the tornado.
I feel thankful, but then I feel like I could have done so much more by being there, so it's kind of mixed.
Resident Stephanie Thomas says several homes surrounding her mom's place were destroyed.
It's the worst thing I've ever seen. And I mean, my mom kept saying, you know, I'm lucky, I'm lucky. I said, Mom, you don't know how lucky you are. And I took her back over here, and there's nothing.
At least 88 people were killed by the tornado outbreak, including 74 in Kentucky. Andrew and Charity Oglesby lost their 5-month-old son, Chase, in the storm. They were also badly injured. Another victim is 27-year-old Corey Scott. He was killed when a tornado destroyed his home in Bowling Green Friday. Husband and wife Jeff and Jennifer Eckert were killed when a tornado hit Dawson Springs, Kentucky. They'd recently moved back full-time after spending years wintering in Florida. Now a memorial has emerged in downtown Mayfield, started by Leo Soto, who flew in from Miami, Florida. He says he was touched by those who offered support during the deadly condo collapse in his hometown earlier this year, which took the lives of some of his friends.
The first step of healing is, recognizing the great loss that happened here. And that's why I feel like this memorial, it's important that it has the pictures of the victims because it puts a face behind the statistics. So,
Yes.
President Biden visited Kentucky Wednesday, pledging his support.
And I intend to do whatever it takes as long as it takes to support your state, your local leaders, and as you recover and rebuild, because you will recover and you will rebuild.
Biden's approved federal disaster declarations for Kentucky, Tennessee, and Illinois, offering residents and local officials increased federal aid. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Advisors for the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will meet today to discuss the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is set to vote on recommendations for the vaccine. They will discuss the benefits and risks of the single-dose therapy and look into a serious but rare type of blood clot that has been linked to it. The government has authorized the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for use in people at least 18 years old, and it can be used as a booster shot. The committee will look at expanding the authorization for children ages 5 to 11. The U.S. Navy will start discharging troops who do not get vaccinated against COVID-19. Officials say the separation from the service will take place as soon as possible. Sailors who previously refused to get vaccinated but have since changed their minds will be able to remain in uniform. As of last week, the Navy had just over 5,700 sailors who haven't been vaccinated. Roughly half of them are asking for an exemption due to religious beliefs. The Navy says no one will be discharged while those requests are pending. The Army's deadline for vaccinations has also passed. The majority of the force is either fully or partially vaccinated. The Air Force has discharged 27 service members who wouldn't get vaccinated. The Senate is giving the green light to a new addition to the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. The measure would forbid the Defense Department from dishonorably discharging military members whose only offense was refusing to get vaccinated. Kansas Senator Roger Marshall introduced the bill rider. In a statement, he explained that he supports the vaccine, but also those who defend our freedoms. He said, simply put, a dishonorable discharge treats our heroes as felons, but our American heroes deserve better. The amendment to the NDAA wouldn't protect troops who opt not to get the jab from being discharged altogether, but would save them from the social stigma of a dishonorable discharge. Instead, it would permit them to be discharged honorably. Dishonorable discharges have historically been reserved for the most reprehensible offenses, with less serious violations often dealt with through a general or a bad conduct discharge. The bill now moves to President Biden's desk. It remains to be seen whether he will sign it or veto it. CEOs of major airlines testified at a Senate hearing Wednesday. Lawmakers want to know if the companies used the pandemic relief money, how they received it from the federal government. During the hearing, two CEOs said masks in the cabin won't help curb the pandemic, calling into question the current mask mandate on planes. Senators also challenged United Airlines' vaccine requirement. Here are the details.
I think the case is very strong that masks don't add much, if anything, in the air cabin environment. It's very safe.
Southwest CEO Gary Kelly made the comment during the Senate committee hearing. American Airlines Chief Doug Parker joined him, emphasizing that thanks to commercial aircraft filters, air quality in the cabin is higher than in other indoor settings. They questioned the need to wear masks on planes. Airlines across the country imposed mask requirements starting in 2020. The Biden administration followed with a federal mandate that will run through January 18th next year. Flight attendant union leader Sarah Nelson added that some older aircraft are not equipped with the same quality of air filters. The Senate hearing also brought into focus United Airlines' vaccine mandate. The company laid off about 200 workers who failed to comply with the requirement. While United CEO Scott Kirby defended the move, Senator Ted Cruz called the mandate a disregard for the rights of employees.
We did this for safety. We believe it saved lives. I think that's my number one obligation is safety, particularly running an airline.
Your employees are being mistreated, and it's disappointing. Your company is better than this, and what you're doing is wrong.
Cruz noted that both American and Southwest Airlines pledged not to fire any employees over vaccine requirements. Kirby later explained that they also granted about 2,000 religious and medical exemptions. The company is now ramping up efforts to hire more pilots.
The Los Angeles School Board has voted to delay enforcing its COVID-19 vaccine mandate for students 12 and older. If the deadline wasn't pushed back, 28,000 unvaccinated students would be at risk from being barred from school. But for some parents, the delay doesn't go far enough. We hear from a parent who's challenging the mandate in court.
28,000 unvaccinated students in Los Angeles no longer face being barred from in-person learning next month. The LA School Board Tuesday voted to push back the deadline of its student vaccine mandate from January 10th to the fall of 2022. A reporter for El American captured the moment parents protesting the mandate heard the news.
Today, the board voted to suspend enforcing.
The board said its decision was based on concerns over learning disruptions that could be caused by transferring tens of thousands of students to independent study. 87% of eligible students in the LA school district are vaccinated. In a statement, school board member Jackie Goldberg emphasized that although the deadline is delayed, the mandate remains. But some LA parents are still hoping they can strike it down in court. Meanwhile, in San Diego, a group of parents is fighting the same mandate in their school district. Sharon McKeeman, founder of Let Them Choose, A group spearheading the litigation says she thinks the LA School Board's decision is due not just to significant logistical issues, but also to legal ones. McKeeman calls the mandates unlawful and says they're unlike other vaccine requirements in California.
These school districts' vaccine requirements are not the same as, the body of vaccine requirements statewide. There is a list of 10 childhood vaccines. Most of those, there's a lot of opinions about them, but they have been around substantially longer than the COVID vaccine. Most of them are for illnesses that do more severely impact young people than COVID does. And those have all been put in place through the legislative process. And so that's very different than a school district just arbitrarily saying they're going to require a very new vaccine and they're going to exclude children if they don't comply.
McKeeman says the Los Angeles and San Diego districts aren't allowing personal belief exemptions from the vaccine. This is different from the state requirements and is another reason why she believes the mandates are unlawful.
A personal belief exemption is very broad. It's protected under state law. Every student has that right when it comes to the COVID vaccine, and school districts, they do not have the authority to usurp that, and that's what we're arguing legally.
McKeeman thinks the deadline suspension in LA will aid their case because, she says, it shows the extent of the disruptions the mandate would cause. The lawsuit filed by Let Them Choose is being heard in court December 20th.
Now we take a closer look at that legal challenge to Biden's vaccine mandate in the 6th Circuit. Recently, the court voted down a request to have all 16 judges from the 6th Circuit review the case, so instead, a 3-judge panel will rule in this case. According to Doug Badger, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a decision is expected this week. Badger explains why Biden's order has taken a lot of legal flack and compares it to the challenges the Trump administration faced over its orders to federal agencies on topics ranging from health and immigration to the environment. Here, Badger lays out what the Biden administration has to prove for the court to allow the mandate to stand.
They have to prove that some vague language in the OSHA statute that gives sort of broad authority to them to address serious workplace hazards somehow applies not only to a virus, which again, OSHA doesn't really have regulatory authority there, but also to require vaccines. Look, with vaccines, it's the FDA, which decides whether they're approved, the CDC, which recommends who should take them, and then CMS, the Medicare and Medicaid, which pays for them. No agency, least of all OSHA, has the ability to force you to take a vaccine.
Are the number of lawsuits directed toward this mandate precedented? Have we seen this many lawsuits over a president's order before?
Well, we've certainly saw a lot of them in the Trump administration. A lot of his agency actions were challenged. I think the reason we're seeing so many on this particular subject of mandates is that the Biden administration has issued so many of them. They've got one for uniformed officers, one for federal employees, one for federal contractors, one for medical workers, another for employees at firms with 100 or more. So they've got multiple mandates out there, and each of them, or at least 3 of the 5, are under significant challenge.
Well, the American Civil Liberties Union says vaccine mandates actually bolster civil liberties. They say vaccine requirements protect workers with regular exposure to the public, like teachers, doctors, and store employees. Do the benefits of the mandate outweigh the costs?
Well, I don't think they do, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Let's look at what happened in the when the mandate on hospital workers to get vaccinated was lifted. Immediately, large medical systems like the Cleveland Clinic, like the Tenet Health System and others, dropped their vaccine mandate. The reason is we have a shortage of medical workers. Hospitals lost 175,000 employees in the first 2 months of the lockdowns back in 2020. They've only recovered less than half of those. So hospitals are already short-staffed, and doing something that's going to result in the firing or the quitting of tens of thousands potentially of hospital workers is not good for the healthcare system.
Senator Joe Manchin says he wants transparency in Biden's social spending bill. He and Senator Sinema are considered key Democratic holdouts on the spending plan. There's a chance senators won't vote on that measure by Christmas. President Biden's roughly $2 trillion spending bill may not pass by the self-imposed Christmas deadline. According to Fox News, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin was asked if he would be able to work through issues to hold a vote before the deadline. He said they haven't gotten anything back from the parliamentarian, meaning they have nothing to vote on. Though Manchin says he will work with the president.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. It really is. But the president, whatever he makes a decision, I'm going to try to work with him. I'm going to try to work with him. I really am.
Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema are considered key holdouts on Biden's spending plan. Manchin has expressed concern about the bill's price tag and warned that broad spending would not be fiscally responsible given that inflation is rising. While Democrats want an expanded child tax credit program, Manchin was said to have pushed to erase the measure, though he denies that he opposed it, as he told reporters on Capitol Hill that he's always been for child tax credits. The bill is currently at $1.75 trillion and includes social and environmental spending. Once more, President Biden is urging Democrats to pass a voting rights bill quickly. Reporters asked him which is a bigger priority, the spending bill or voting legislation.
If we can get the congressional voting rights done, we should do it. If we can't, we got to keep going. There's nothing domestically more important than voting rights. It's the single biggest issue.
He spoke to reporters in Dawson Springs, Kentucky. That was after he toured the damage caused by devastating tornadoes last week. 9 people are dead after a private jet crashed yesterday outside Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. The airline and local media say Puerto Rican music producer Flo La Movie is one of the 9 victims. Alidosa Aviation Group says the Gulfstream G4SP left for Miami with 2 crew members and 7 passengers. The crash occurred at Las Americas Airport. Among the passengers, Alidosa listed were Jose Angel Hernandez and Debbie Jimenez Garcia. Music magazine Billboard says Hernandez made music under the name Flo La Movie, while Jimenez was the producer's wife. Alidosa also named Hayden Hernandez among the victims, who was Hernandez's son. A grand jury overseeing a Florida condo collapse says steps could have been taken to prevent the deadly accident. The Miami-Dade grand jury said those steps would have ensured the structural integrity of the building. 98 people lost their lives when a portion of the Champlain Tower South building collapsed in the middle of the night on June 24th. In a 43-page report, the grand jury concluded that very serious lessons were learned from the event. The report says that state and local governments need to focus more attention on the structural deterioration of residential buildings. The grand jury suggests that building safety inspections happen no less than every 10 years. The current standard is every 40 years. It also recommends that anyone elected to a condo board must undergo educational courses. The training would emphasize the importance of routine building maintenance and effective management of condo funds. A Texas truck driver is headed to prison for 110 years. A Colorado judge gave the sentence this week following a conviction for vehicular homicide. The 26-year-old driver's semi-trailer crashed into stopped traffic and killed 4 motorists along a mountain interstate in April 2019. He told authorities his brakes failed and he lost control. In October, a Jefferson County, Colorado jury found him guilty of 4 homicide charges, plus multiple counts of assault and reckless driving. Jefferson County District Judge Bruce Jones said Colorado law required he impose the mandatory minimum sentences for all counts the driver was found guilty of, but noted that he had no desire to send him to prison for life. When he addressed the court, the man wept, begging the victims' families for forgiveness and asked the judge for leniency. New buildings in New York City won't be allowed to use natural gas. The City Council on Wednesday voted to ban natural gas hookups in most new construction. Lawmakers say this is to reduce carbon emissions. Once New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio signs the bill, most new buildings under 7 stories won't be allowed to use natural gas starting in late 2023. And for new buildings with over 7 stories, they won't be allowed to use natural gas starting in 2027. Instead of gas or oil, these new buildings must use electricity for cooking, heating, and hot water. Hospitals, commercial kitchens, and laundromats are exempt. Natural gas is currently New York City's main source of electricity. Switching to all-electric buildings could mean higher prices for residents to heat their homes. Americans are dying because of opioid overdoses every day, particularly from fentanyl, which is extremely deadly in small doses. In New York City, 2 drug traffickers got caught with fentanyl but were later released. NTD's Arian Pastar has more.
2 milligrams of fentanyl is enough to kill you. It's about the size of this grain of rice here. Now recently, 2 drug traffickers got caught in New York City with 5 pounds of fentanyl, which is pretty much the same size as this bag and can kill over 1 million people. But the judge didn't set any bail and just let him go. According to a New York newspaper, the local district attorney requested $50,000 bail for each defendant. Judge Karen Gopi decided not to set any bail.
The judges need to be held accountable. You can't just be letting people out of jail when they're distributing poisonous fentanyl.
Derek Maltz is the former chief of the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force. He says judges and prosecutors are following liberal policies that are soft on criminals.
We call it the hugs for thugs policies. They don't work. They failed. We have to hold these people accountable. 5 pounds of fentanyl can kill over 1 million people. That's a chemical weapon in our country. It sounds a little bit dramatic, but if you think about it and look at the death statistics, it's not out of the question. Like, we should be treating that as a very serious crime.
Maltz says that if we look at the bigger picture, the fentanyl coming into the U.S. can be seen as an attack on American citizens.
The cartels are working very closely with the Chinese transnational criminals. They're flooding our streets with the poisonous fentanyl. And the reality is we have to treat it like a terrorist act. There's never been in the history of this country more deaths, all right, from any terrorist organization of American citizens.
I reached out to the court to ask why no bail was set for the 2 suspects. They didn't provide any details on the case before broadcast. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
And President Biden acknowledged the threat of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids coming into the U.S. He issued an order declaring it a national emergency, which will grant various agencies more powers to stop the drugs from coming in. The State Department is offering up to $35 million for information leading to the arrest of 7 drug dealers. They came from either China or Mexico. One of them is named Yi, a Chinese national whom the Justice Department considers one of the world's largest alleged anabolic steroid producers. Court documents say that Yi is the owner of a chemical manufacturing company. It has produced and distributed about $280 million worth of anabolic steroids. About 1/5 were shipped to the United States within 5 years. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration has listed Yi as one of its 10 most wanted criminals. A federal grand jury is formally levying charges against oil company Amplify Energy Corporation, plus 2 of its subsidiaries. It accuses them of negligence while discharging oil during a California pipeline break in early October. The indictment was filed yesterday. It charges the Houston-based company and subsidiaries Beta Operating Company and San Pedro Bay Pipeline Company with 1 misdemeanor count of negligent discharge of oil. The companies own and operate the 17-mile-long San Pedro Bay Pipeline. If found guilty, the companies face a maximum of 5 years of probation, as well as potentially millions of dollars in fines. And just ahead, along the U.S. coast, students are building oyster gardens to save the ecosystem. Oysters filter the water and form reefs that provide habitat for hundreds of species. More soon when we return.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. Before all this started, I had already written in my memoir, I dedicate this book to anyone that's looking for hope. Well, right now, we're all looking for hope. I believe that my story is going to bring inspiration and hope to everyone. By the time you're done reading my book, you will believe that with God, all things are possible. To thank you all for your support, I'm offering some of my best prices ever on MyPillow products, including this exclusive bundle. You get my book and these 5 MyPillows. They all have beautiful scenes and verses from the Bible, such as Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. This 6-pack bundle is regularly $219. Now it's just $99.98 and free shipping with your promo code. Go to mypillow.com and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below. Thank you and God bless.
Oyster reefs are a cornerstone of coastal ecosystems. Not only can each oyster filter some 25 to 50 gallons of water a day, the reefs they form provide habitat for hundreds of species. As their numbers plummet, volunteers are now raising oysters along the U.S. coasts to help restore depleted reefs. Let's take a look.
Volunteers along the Mississippi Gulf Coast are raising oysters to help protect coastal ecosystems. Most of them grow in wire cages hanging from the docks, some tied to open floats. Oyster larvae or spat attach themselves to larger oysters, forming reefs that provide habitat for more than 300 different species.
So it forms these clumps in the garden. We take the oyster clumps from the gardens, turn them over to DMR, and they plant them on other reefs, okay? So what that does is it creates all these different cracks and crevices. You can see here, there's tons of different places for fish to hide.
Between the 1950s and the 1990s, oyster populations in the United States dropped by 68% due to overfishing, pollution, and other problems. The Mississippi-Alabama Sea Grants Gardening Program started in 2001 as a master's thesis research. Now 2 schools in Mississippi incorporate the gardens in their marine science curriculum.
When they get out there, they have to dunk the baskets, try to get as much sediment off of them as possible. Open the baskets up, check for predators, remove predators, look for spat that's still alive, measure the spats, record that data.
Commercial farmers grow oysters near the surface of the water. There they mature much faster with more plankton and less predators. Oyster gardening uses the same techniques, but not for the same end.
The habitats they create, and they're more than just things to just eat. They're things that help our, the ecosystem.
Today, there are more than 1,000 oyster gardens dotting the shores of Maryland, Virginia, Mississippi, and Alabama. Gardeners have added at least 15 million oysters in Maryland and 1 million in Virginia. The goal is set to reach 10 billion by 2025.
Veronica Ryan, a type 2 diabetes patient, was prescribed a drug called Invokana in September 2015. About a month later, she was admitted to the hospital with ketoacidosis, a potentially fatal buildup of acid in the blood. Here's more.
To me, it was just straight poison. It almost took my life.
Veronica Ryan is a 58-year-old type 2 diabetes patient in Chattanooga, Tennessee. In September of 2015, she was prescribed Invokana, a diabetes drug sold by Johnson & Johnson. Over the next few months, her health deteriorated. She was in and out of the hospital with ketoacidosis, a potentially fatal buildup of acid in the blood. Ryan was one of thousands of patients who was prescribed the drug before the U.S. Food and Drug Administration intervened. This is her story. Symptoms began weeks after Ryan began taking Invokana.
I would lay down and get back up the next morning. It was like, what is going on with me? I just keep like I'm losing weight overnight. And my husband would say something. He said, Ronnie, you're losing a lot of weight, But I didn't feel well. I felt sick all the time.
She was admitted to the hospital with a diagnosis of ketoacidosis, but doctors couldn't determine what caused the condition. Documents show that the company had known since shortly after the drug's launch in 2013 that some Invokana patients fell ill with ketoacidosis, a dangerous condition that's unusual in type 2 patients. J&J executives repeatedly overruled safety concerns raised internally, leaving doctors and patients in the dark about the health risk. Ryan was discharged the next day and filled another Invokana prescription 2 weeks later. A few days after Thanksgiving, her symptoms returned.
My kidneys failed, my heart was failing, and my lungs had collapsed. And I just couldn't believe it because, I just was out of it. But I was feeling sick just on and off for like 2 months.
Her closest friends gathered at the hospital to pray. During Ryan's 12-day hospital stay in December of 2015, the FDA announced that it would require Invokana and other drugs in its class to add warnings about ketoacidosis.
If I wouldn't have went to the hospital, I would have passed because my kidneys were failing. I couldn't breathe, and my heart was just constantly racing the whole time.
Ryan dropped her lawsuit against J&J in 2019. She told Reuters she couldn't comment on the resolution of her case.
I'm just so frustrated with how quick doctors are to try you on different medications and I don't even have the words for it. It's just like you're just being a guinea pig all the time with different types of medications. And Invokana was the medication that almost took my life.
J&J declined to comment on Ryan's case. It defends Invokana's overall safety record and says it cares, quote, deeply about the safety and well-being of patients treated with our medications.
In another case, the U.S. health regulator has issued a warning letter to Medtronic. The letter raises concerns related to medical device quality management. The Food and Drug Administration's letter highlights problems in areas including risk assessment, complaint handling, and device recalls. These are concerns at Medtronic's diabetes facility in Northridge, California. The company is rapidly addressing the FDA's concerns and reviewing its actions with the agency. A landmark agreement made on Wednesday aims to strengthen the crime-fighting alliance between the United States and Australia. Law enforcement in both countries may eventually have access to the communications data of each other's residents. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and Australian Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews signed the agreement. The new pact promises to streamline the speed of criminal investigations. Previously, the process could stretch over 2 years. Under the new pact, with the court permission, police in either country can obtain messaging data directly from platforms like Facebook. The move marks a partnership between the two countries in addressing serious crimes. These include child sex abuse, terrorism, ransomware attacks, and cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. Garland said the framework emphasizes maintaining strong protections for the rule of law, privacy, and civil liberties. But Congress must still review and approve the agreement before the speedier data sharing can happen. You might recognize the names of President Biden's latest ambassador picks. Wednesday, the White House announced that Biden is nominating former Olympic figure skater Michelle Kwan to serve as ambassador to Brazil. Kwan worked on the Biden presidential campaign and is a longtime Democratic activist. She said, quote, "If confirmed, I will be very proud to serve my country." Biden is also picking the daughter of former President John F. Kennedy, Carolyn Kennedy, to serve as ambassador to Australia. Kennedy is a longtime friend, ally, and donor to Biden. She also served as the ambassador to Japan in the Obama administration. The nominations now go to the Senate for confirmation, where dozens of Biden nominations are waiting for a vote. U.S. military commanders in the Pacific built a new software tool. It's designed to help the Pentagon predict whether certain actions will stir up a big reaction from China. Those actions may include military sales, U.S.-backed military activities, and even congressional visits to hotspots like Taiwan. Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks was briefed Wednesday on the new tool. A U.S. official said using data from early 2020, the computer-based system evaluates significant activities that once impacted U.S.-China relations. The new software will allow U.S. officials to check on planned operations up to 4 months in advance. Tibetan children as young as 4 years old are being sent away to boarding school, but these aren't your average institutes. They're built by the Chinese regime, and teachers say they're beginning to erode the region's language and culture. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
A staggering figure has come out of Tibet. Almost 80% of Tibetan children aged 6 to 18 have been placed in state-run boarding schools. There they are cut off from their families, language, and traditions. That's according to analysis of official data from U.S.-based NGO, the Tibet Action Institute. The organization's December report says the Chinese Communist regime has established a vast colonial boarding school system in Tibet, which separates children as young as 4 years old from their parents. The report quoted one parent in eastern Tibet as saying authorities converted the village schools to nursery schools in 2020, and at the same time prohibited children from studying in their villages. These children aren't even allowed to return home for holidays. And according to a teacher from eastern Tibet, teachers must speak and teach all courses in Mandarin only. That's including nursery rhymes and bedtime stories for younger students. When these children go to primary school at the age of 7, hardly any of them can speak Tibetan. While another account details something even more sinister. A female boarding student says she witnessed cases of sexual abuse and violence inside her school. She recounted that men from outside the school, as well as some male teachers, would enter the girls' dormitories. She went on to explain that beatings were so severe and frequent that students were in a state of constant fear. The Chinese Communist regime has worked to eliminate local Tibetan schools for a decade. They've arrested Tibetan school leaders, language teachers, and intellectuals, seemingly to wipe out the Tibetan tradition. Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country's relationship with China has reached a breakthrough level. He made the comment to Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping during a virtual meeting between them on Wednesday. The two leaders agreed they'll stand firm in rejecting what they call Western interference. Xi Jinping also accused certain international forces of interfering in the internal affairs of China and Russia under what he describes as the guise of democracy and human rights. As Russia's relations with the West worsen, the country has cultivated closer ties with China. Putin told Xi that a new model of cooperation has been formed between their countries, based on such principles as non-interference in internal affairs and respect for each other's interests. On top of the discussions, the meeting also led observers to speculate about Xi Jinping's health. That's after he coughed 3 times in a row. Xi's cough is absent from Chinese state-owned broadcaster CCTV's footage of the meeting, but it can be seen from the Russian side's footage.
Strong winds, heavy rain, and flooding hit parts of central and southern Philippines today. That's as Typhoon Rai rapidly intensified to a Category 5 storm, forcing mass evacuations and flight cancellations. Rai is the 15th typhoon to enter Philippine territory this year. It brought maximum sustained winds of up to 121 miles per hour. That's according to the Philippine Weather Bureau. Video captured shows strong winds with trees shaking and floodwaters flowing past. The nation's disaster agency said it had received reports of power outages and floodings in some areas, while tens of thousands of people living in coastal areas were forced to evacuate. The Southeast Asian nation also postponed the start of a mass vaccination drive in most of the country because of the storm. Up next, European leaders are deciding what to do with Russia's military buildup near the Ukrainian border. Ukraine's president wants the Union to sanction Russia before an invasion actually takes place. Find out more here on NTD News. And still to come, an Italian company invents a solar-powered machine to roast coffee beans using a small motorized reflector. All that and more in just a moment.
I will bless those who bless you.
Here in Israel and the former Soviet Union, the Jewish people are living in very difficult times. There are now thousands of destitute, elderly Jews who are desperately in need of basic food. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground with survival food boxes, but the need for food is growing. Call or go online now and say, I will bless these children of Abraham.
It's the elderly widows who are hurting the most. Many of them are also Holocaust survivors who are once again crying out for help. Their need, as you can see, is extremely urgent.
Right now, you can give a gift of life of $25 that will help rush an emergency food box to an elderly Jewish person who doesn't have enough to eat. When you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives.
For over 35 years, this trusted ministry has given Christians like me a way to tangibly bless Jewish people who are in need throughout the world.
Wherever in the world the Jewish people have the greatest need, our spiritual mandate is to feed the hungry and to care for the widows and orphans.
Together, we bring them comfort and love, but just as important, we bring them this life-saving food box.
When you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives. Without your response, their pain and suffering will continue.
Call or go online now and say, I will save a life. I will bless and comfort the Jewish people.
Europe continues to deal with escalating tension between Ukraine and Russia. The Ukrainian president says he is ready to hold talks with Russia, but also wants the European Union to apply sanctions on it before a potential invasion takes place. Here are the details.
Speaking after an EU summit in Belgium on Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to have formal talks with Russia. But he notes that Russian President Vladimir Putin doesn't seem willing to come to the table. The Ukrainian leader urges the EU to sanction Russia before it takes military action against Ukraine.
It is important to have sanctions and have them applied before rather than after the conflict, because if they are applied after the conflict, this would basically make them meaningless, and we have the war going on for 8 years.
At a summit on Thursday, the EU will decide how best to prevent a Russian invasion. European Council President Charles Michel on Wednesday voiced support for Ukraine. He says he hopes there will be no further escalation.
We have sanctions in place, point one. We are ready to take sanctions, additional sanctions, if it is needed, and we will assess what will be the situation. And we have expressed, and we will reiterate tomorrow, a very firm position. We support the territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Also on Wednesday, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called on Russia to de-escalate. But she says the EU is prepared for any increasing aggression from Russia's side.
And the message is very clear. Should Russia take further aggressive actions against Ukraine, the costs will be severe and the consequences serious. And this is the clear messaging at this time.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken told NBC on Sunday that Russian aggression might jeopardize the operation of Nord Stream 2. It's a gas pipeline that transports Russia's natural gas to Germany. He says the pipeline is a source of leverage on Russia if Germany is open to shutting it down over the current tension. But he noted that no gas is flowing through the pipeline at this time, so it cannot serve as leverage unless the pipeline is active.
Russia said Presidents Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden could speak again before the new year. However, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said nothing firm had been agreed upon. The two leaders last spoke on December 7th. Two politicians in Brazil took their differences to the ring. They traded blows over a local water park dispute. Mayor Simão Peixoto from the Brazil city of Borba went head-to-head with former councilor Enero Merico da Silva. The two duked it out in 3 rounds of mixed martial arts combat. The fight comes after da Silva called Peixoto a crook following a water park dispute in an Amazonian municipality. During the first round, da Silva got some blows in against his rival, but Peixoto fought his way back to win the fight. A new Japanese inflatable scooter is designed to help riders get around in Tokyo, and it can fit into a backpack. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
If you need to take a short trip somewhere, but don't have access to a car or public transportation, Japan's Poimo may be your solution. Poimo stands for Portable Inflatable Mobility.
People would imagine balloons to be soft, but this one is like a basketball. Even if people ride on it, it's steady as a rock and sturdy.
The inflatable electric scooter was developed by researchers from Tokyo University as a mobility solution.
I first thought about developing a mobility device that can bridge the last 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers, or distance between a train station and a workplace, where there's some distance but no public transportation.
The scooter runs on an electric motor and can fit easily into a medium-sized backpack in its deflated form.
Safety and operability of vehicles take time to be developed, so to merchandise this scooter as a product, we need to guarantee that it can be ridden safely.
Using an air pump, it takes about 2 minutes to inflate the device into a portable ride. With a single battery charge, the 22-pound scooter can run up to 90 minutes at about 9 miles per hour.
As you can see, Poimo can be built into different shapes. With this, I hope we can make it in the shape each person wants. For example, a shape that is suitable for a person's height so that we can offer the most suitable mobility device for that person.
The research team has also developed a software which allows users to customize the shape of the vehicle, such as a sofa or wheelchair. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
An Italian company has invented a solar-powered machine to roast coffee beans without using any fossil fuels.
The most important step of the coffee-making process is roasting. Different methods have evolved over centuries. Now, the Italian tech company Puro Sole has developed an installation that is able to roast coffee beans with renewable energy. The founders of this project are 2 electronic engineers, Antonio Derbe, Daniele Tomei, and their longtime friend and coffee lover, Luca Del Bufalo.
This project came to life because we are part of a robotic and IT company that had the curiosity to use heliostats, that are devices used to direct the sun, solar power, towards a target. Then we met a friend of ours. He is a coffee lover, and he suggested us to use this technology to build a coffee roasting solar plant.
Puro Sole's technology aims to drastically reduce the cost of large thermodynamic facilities. To do so, they came up with a small motorized reflector that they say is totally autonomous and self-sufficient.
The sun, reflecting on the mirrors, comes across a sensor positioned in front of these rotating mirrors. Then the sensor calculates the angle of the incident light and keeps it steady during the entire process. This way, the mirrors keep redirecting the light to the same point. The precision is pretty high. This technology, besides reducing CO2 emissions and costs, as we don't use gas or electricity, it also achieved qualitatively important and almost unique results. Let's keep in mind that us, Purosol, are the only ones in the world to build plants of this kind.
The company also makes its own coffee and sells it online. Dr. Giuseppe Longo is the owner of a pharmacy in Rome. He's a regular customer.
I find this coffee very aromatic, not rich, and among all coffees I drink, this is one of the best for its taste and digestibility.
Puro Sole offers a range of solar plants that can roast 20 to 400 pounds of coffee beans a day. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A fan-favorite comfort food in South Korea is getting a new look. It's called kimchi, typically made of salted and fermented vegetables, but a new drinkable version has hit store shelves, made with lactic acid for a more mild flavor. Let's take a look.
A new healthy staple hits the thriving South Korean food scene, white kimchi juice. It's not as spicy or tangy as the standard dish and can be drank straight up.
People usually expect red kimchi when they think about kimchi juice. However, we used traditional white kimchi, so it's not spicy and has a mild taste. More specifically, we don't use salted fish. The ingredients are all vegetables.
Park is the CEO of an equestrian company. While on traveling for business abroad, she says she missed Korean comfort cuisine and came up with the idea of making portable kimchi pockets.
Sometimes I would really crave cold kimchi, but it was hard to get, and its smell was also an issue. So I started to think of ways I could eat kimchi more conveniently.
Convenience stores across Korea, including 7-Eleven, rolled out the new product last week. The drinkable kimchi comes in a 4.4-ounce pouch. the equivalent of a small side dish of standard kimchi. Displayed in fridges next to milk, boiled eggs, and other snacks, these juice packets present an alternative to simple breakfast menus.
I would like to have this with sliced apple, radish, and cabbage. It would be refreshing. Housewives would welcome it. I like it.
I couldn't imagine how it would taste. It was quite strange to me at first, but it tasted familiar.
South Korea officially designated November 22nd as Kimchi Day in 2020. It was part of an effort to pass on the culture of the traditional dish. This year, California followed suit, passing a measure to join in celebrating the cuisine.
A Welsh lady known as Nana Baubles has officially got the world's largest collection of Christmas ornaments. Guinness World Records awarded the title on Wednesday. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the story.
A Welsh woman known as Nana Baubles has broken a world record for collecting nearly 1,800 Christmas ornaments.
It's a wonderful experience. It's wonderful. Whenever I go anywhere and I see a bauble I like, I fetch it home, especially during the Christmas time.
Sylvia Pope from Swansea says her haul continues to grow.
When my grandchildren brought their children here and they saw what I'd done to the ceiling, they were, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Every year they can't wait for them to go up. They know that it's coming towards Christmas. There's a few more that I have to add to this year's collection.
Sylvia explains why Christmas is so special to her.
We didn't have a lot. We weren't very well off. And that's why when it comes to Christmas now, I will do what I can to afford, what I can afford to do a good Christmas for the children.
In a range of colours and designs, the baubles come from many places, including Buckingham Palace. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
The small town of Tlalpujahua, Mexico, has a reputation for making high-quality, handmade glass ornaments. And for many years, its colorful products have found buyers all over the world. The town's production places a premium on quality. It begins with artisans' hand-blown glass into the desired shapes over a flame, transforming long glass tubes into shapes ranging from standard baubles to flowers, chilies, apples, birds, or bells. The ornaments are then decorated in sparkling colors. Each year, artisans make millions of baubles with thousands of locals employed in the industry. About 60% of its production goes abroad to the United States and Canada, as well as distant markets in Japan, Malaysia, and Europe. The Perseverance rover landed on Mars just 10 months ago, but we're already learning more about the red planet, such as lava once flowed at the site of an ancient lake. The bedrock that the rover has been driving on was formed by volcanic lava flows. Those rocks interacted with water multiple times. Some of them even include organic molecules. Perseverance has tools that can image and analyze these rocks. So far, the rover has collected 4 samples. It plans to collect up to 37 more. They will eventually be sent to Earth for further analysis. Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selected videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.